Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar on Payroll End of Year process for 2017-18. My name is Meghna and I'm the New Learning and Development Coordinator. And joining me today is Sharon, who's also from Learning and Development, and she will be moderating this session. Now, just to let you all know, there are 3 documents: a Payroll End of Year guide, the presentation we're going to be looking at today, and the info about STP and employee onboarding, available under the handout section within the webinar. Also, we will be asking you all a few questions throughout the webinar. This is more to assist us with our future training webinars and documentation associated with end of year. Let's begin by taking our first poll. Have you done end of year process previously with Attaché, or is this the first time you're processing end of year with Attaché? So Sharon, how did we go with the poll?
Meghna, it seems like 75% have done end of year previously with Attaché and 25% haven't.
Thank you for that, Sharon. And thank you all for voting. So let's have a look and see what we have on the agenda for today. So for today's webinar, we will be looking at version requirements for running and printing payment summaries for 2017-18, information about reportable fringe benefits, steps we need to take before commencing the end of year process, your end of year process, that is creating and printing payment summaries and creating the magnetic media file, what to do before you process your July pays. We will look at some basic housekeeping and troubleshooting, and what's new with Australian payroll and Attaché for 2018-19. Sharon will talk you through STP at that point. Now, if you have any questions, please type that in the questions panel. If time permits, we will respond to them after the webinar, else we will respond to you via email after the webinar. All right, so let's look at the Attaché payroll version requirements to do your end of year process. Attaché recommends that you process your payroll end of year. For Attaché 18 users, the version you require is 18.1, and for Attaché BI users, it's 3.7.2. Now, if you're using other versions than that is recommended, to process your end of year, the minimum version you will require is Attaché BI users is 3.7.0, and for Attaché accounts and payroll is 1.17. Now note, with this version though, you would have to issue your paper payment summaries. In case you do not know or you're not sure about which version of Attaché you're using, when you open Attaché, navigate to Help and select About Attaché. You will get a little pop-up screen that looks like this, New Features, and ensures that you're reporting payroll information to the ATO and your employees in the correct formats. And if you wish to upgrade your Attaché, speak to your consultant for further assistance. For this webinar, I will be showing you end of year process using Attaché 18. If you're using other versions, there are steps on how to do so detailed in the Help Centre. The next topic we're going to look at is the fringe benefits. Now, before you check the payroll reports, you will need to process all the reportable fringe benefits. The fringe benefit tax is for the period from the 1st of April 2017 to the 31st of March 2018. If the value of certain exempt and non-exempt reportable fringe benefits provided exceeds 2,000 in a fringe benefit tax year, you must report the grossed up taxable value of those benefits on the payment summary. The gross up rate of 1.8868 is used regardless of whether the benefits provided are Type 1 or Type 2. Now, before you start to process your fringe benefits, there's a couple of checks you need to do. First, check your payroll setups to confirm the FBT rate and the FBT threshold details. Next, check the employer contributions code and the category for fringe benefits. Once you've done those 2 checks, you're ready to process your fringe benefits through adjustments and check and correct if any errors. So let's take a look at this in Attaché. Firstly, to check your FBT rate and FBT threshold, we'll go to Setups, Payroll, and under Options, select Payroll Options. Click on the Tax Details tab and ensure you've got the correct FBT rate and the FBT threshold details. Now for the fringe benefits year ending March 2018, the FBT rate is set to 47% and the FBT threshold amount is 2,000. If you've got this information in here set up correctly, then we are ready to go and do the other checks. So if not, make the necessary updates and save those updates. Okay, so the next step is to check your reportable fringe benefit codes. And to do this, again through Setups, Payroll, under Employer Contributions, click Maintain. In the Contribution Code field, select the code for your fringe benefit. As you can see, I have two options available here, one for my non-exempt fringe benefit and the other for my exempt. What I'm going to do is I'll take a look at the non-exempt option. In the contribution category, make sure that this information has the correct reportable fringe benefit, non-cash benefits type selected. So you can see for my non-exempt, it's got the non-exempt selected here. Now, if you do not have fringe benefits added to your system, you would need to enter the new contribution code that has a correct contribution category of reportable fringe benefit, non-cash benefit, exempt or non-exempt. All right, so once this is done, you will need to go and process your fringe benefits. So let's do that. And remember, this is done as an adjustment. So to do this, go to Payroll, Transactions, and under Adjustments, click Create or Modify. For this webinar, I will process a non-exempt fringe benefit transaction for Patrick Burns. And in the function field, we need to enter an adjustment with an empty pay. So select the empty pay option. Enter your pay description. I will call this FBT 2017-18 and click Accept. In this screen, you need to enter the amount of the fringe benefit provided to the employee. So using the new line type, select Employer Contribution Super, and using the code, select the fringe benefit option that you want to do. So remember, for this webinar, I'm doing a non-exempt fringe benefit for Patrick Burns, so I'm going to select that option here. Key in the amount. This amount should be the net amount, not the grossed up amount. Attaché will calculate the grossed up amount for you and will report this information in the employee's payment summary. Okay, so let's go accept that, and you can see that line's been added in here. And we'll finish this adjustment and accept the pay. All right, so we are now ready to go and check the pays for the fringe benefit transaction we've just added. And the way we do this is from Payroll and Workflows, clicking on Check Pays. Make sure you enter the correct dates for pay period ending and date paid. This should be set to the 31st of March, 2018. I only want to process the adjustment pay, so I'll untick these two boxes and click Print. Check the report and make sure that the information in here is correct. So I can see I've got Patrick Burns and I've created an adjustment pay. I've got that information in here. Okay, and then what we do is we go through the normal payroll process, that is checking for any exceptions, printing your pre-processed reports, backing up your payroll data, and then processing pays whenever you're ready. Let's go and process this now. And close out of here. Now that the fringe benefit has been processed, we need to check this is done correctly. And to do this, there are two areas of the software we need to check. The two areas are the employee inquiry screen and the pay-as-you-go tax reconciliation report. So let's take a look at that. Now, to access your employee inquiry screen, you need to navigate to Payroll, Master Files, Employee Details, Inquiry. Locate your employee and view the summary. Then you want to itemize the information and view the employer contributions. And this is what the screen would look like. Attaché Payroll does display two fringe benefit years of information. The non-grossed up FBT value that we've entered should appear in the current year total fringe benefit field. If you were to go and check your pays using the wrong date, you may end up with a value in the next year total fringe benefit field. So just be aware of what information gets displayed in the screen here. Also, if you enter a fringe benefit amount of less than $2,000, the value will appear in the current year total field. However, it will not appear on the employee's payment summary. Okay, so that's your first check. Now, the next place we need to check is the pay-as-you-go tax reconciliation report. And the way you navigate through to this is you go to Payroll, Period End, Payment Summaries, Pay-as-you-go Tax Reconciliation Report. Make sure that the starting tax year is set to 2017. And this is what the report would look like. This report displays the net fringe benefit amount you entered, as well as the grossed up amount. So this is what you need to check. If your fringe benefits do not process correctly, what you then do is you have to amend the fringe benefit transaction. And the way you do this is you process the transaction using adjustment pay, but this time round in the function field you would select Add New Pay, Start with Other Pay option. Once you've selected the adjustment pay number and update the pay description, you can then go and reverse the original transaction. The way the reverse line appears is with a negative amount, as you can see highlighted here. Once completed, check the pays and ensure that the pay period ending and the date paid dates are the same, which is the 31st of March 2018. Rerun any pre-processed reports, back up your data, and then you would go and re-enter the correct fringe benefit transaction. Alright, so let's take another poll now. When do you process your fringe benefit transactions? Is it at each pay period, as part of your fringe benefit end of year, which is in March, as part of the end of financial year process, or you do not process any fringe benefits? All right, Sharon, so how did we go with that poll?
Meghna, a small percentage of our users do every pay period, 16% as part of the fringe benefits end of year, and 50% as part of end of year financial year.
Okay, thank you for that, Sharon, and thank you all once again for responding. Yep, so that's your fringe benefits. What we're now going to look at is what are the steps we need to take to prepare our data for end of year processing. So firstly, what we need to do is create a historical company to which we will archive the payroll data for 2017-18 once we have created the MDube file or the magnetic media file. And then we also need to reconcile our payroll data. So let's take a look at how we go ahead and create the historical company. From the menu, we need to select File, Set Up and Delete Companies. This is the screen you get. Enter the name of the company. For example, you can call this your company name, followed by 2017-18. Once you've created and printed the payment summaries, and created and the ETP payment summaries, and you've also created the MDube file, you will then take a copy of your payroll data and restore the archive of the current company's dataset into this company you've just created. We will look at restoring the payroll data for 2017-18 later in this webinar. Next, we need to reconcile the payroll information, and to do this, we use the Pay-as-you-go tax reconciliation report, the payment summary details report, the Payroll End of Year Reconciliation Worksheet, and the Pay Summary Report. Now, it is recommended that you reconcile your payroll throughout the year, at least quarterly. So the first report we will look at is to start the reconciliation process is the Pay-as-you-go tax reconciliation report. This displays any transactions you have processed since the last time you ran end of year and does not report on date basis. So let's take a look at this report in Attaché. So to access this information, you would go through to Payroll, Period End, and under Payment Summaries, you click on Pay-as-you-go Tax Reconciliation Report. Make sure that your starting tax year is set to 2017, and what we're going to do is print the report for all the employees. Now, the Pay-as-you-go Tax Reconciliation Report displays any warning messages for data that may have been set up and processed incorrectly. For example, if you have a look at Joe has an invalid TFN number. You need to fix this information from the employee's master file. Another common warning message you may see is that tax contains cents. Now, this message can be ignored as Attaché truncates any cents from the payment summaries. And if you see any other warning messages, please refer to the End of Year Processing Guide in the Help Centre for an explanation of those. Okay, so what we want to do now is reconcile this report with the Payment Summary Details Report. The Payment Summary Details Report shows all details that will be printed on the payment summaries and the ETP payment summaries. This only includes pays that have been dated between the 1st of July 2017 to the 30th of June 2018. So again, let's take a look at this in Attaché. From Payroll, Period End, under Payment Summary, we click on Payment Summary Details Report. Once again, make sure the starting tax year is set to 2017, and we're going to print this report for all employees. You can see the information displayed is different to the Pay-as-you-go Tax Reconciliation Report. This report shows you the type of payment summaries, whether it is a normal payment summary or an ETP payment summary, and if the payment summary has been processed or unprocessed. You must also check for any errors or warnings in this report, as these could cause your magnetic media file or the MDUP file to be rejected. So before you create any payment summaries or do the data validation, you must resolve any errors and check all the warnings. So use both these reports in conjunction with each other. The Payroll End of Year Reconciliation Worksheet. Now, this can be printed from the Help Centre, and using the information from the Pay-as-you-go Tax Reconciliation Report and the Payment Summary Details Report, you can check your payroll is in balance. It is important that the data is correct and any discrepancies are understood and corrected where required. So what we're going to look at now is information that appears in both your Pay-as-you-go Tax Reconciliation Report and the Payment Summary Details Report. So firstly, the period of employment. For each employee, the period of employment should have the correct from and to dates. If the employee was employed for part of the year, this should be reflected in those dates. The total tax in the report should equal the amount pay-as-you-go remitted to the ATO. Check your salary sacrifice and RESC amounts have been reported correctly, keeping in mind that the total gross amount has been reduced by the salary sacrifice amount. Check that the RESC amount balances to the amount that has been processed using the salary sacrifice code. Now, if there is a discrepancy, check the setup of your salary sacrifice deduction code and make sure the tax certificate code is reportable super contribution. You also need to check that your allowances and deductions have been taxed correctly and are included in the correct label for the payment summary. Some deductions and allowances need to be itemized and others should be included in your tax certificate totals. So for example, if we have a look at the kilometer allowance setup, you should see itemize on tax certificate in the tax certificate code. Other codes you may use are do not show on tax certificate or include in the tax certificate total. So ensure that this information is set up correctly. And lastly is the fringe benefits. Make sure this is processed correctly and are in the correct year. The last report we will look at is the pay summary report. Now this report shows totals by employee for gross, taxable gross, other income, lump sum payments, tax, deductions, net pay, and employer contributions. So let's take a look at this report in Attaché. Again, to navigate to that report, you go through Payroll, Period End, and under Payment Summaries, click on Pay Summary Report. Now you need to print this report for the financial year. So using date range, specify that information. So that is from the 1st of July 2017 to the 30th of June 2018. And make sure that we've got date paid selected. If you wish to display the income types that make up the totals for each employee, make sure you have your print line details set to yes. Okay, I'm going to go print this. Reconcile this report with both your pay-as-you-go tax reconciliation report and the payment summary details report. Most importantly, that the gross amount on the pay summary report should equal the taxable amount on the other two reports. Keep in mind, any differences might be an RESC amount or an after-tax allowance deduction. So what happens if you do find any discrepancies? In that scenario, what we recommend is you run the pay details and the pay total reports to find transactions that are out of balance. These reports can be accessed by navigating to Payroll, Reports, History. Now, more information on this is available in the Help Centre. Alright, so now that we've reconciled all our data, we can start to process the end of year. What I mean by that is creating and printing the payment summaries and the ETP payment summaries, and creating the magnetic media file, which is also known as the MDUP file. The first step is to validate your employer details. This is where you would define and validate the employer and supplier details. Test the postcodes to make sure that you do not have any invalid postcodes in your MDUP file, as that would be rejected by the ATO. And check and amend any errors or warnings before you submit the data to the ATO. In Attaché, we navigate through to Payroll, Period End, and under Payment Summaries, click on Employer Details Validation. First, is the employer the supplier? Now, it is possible for the employer and the supplier details to differ. For example, if the payroll is being processed by a payroll bureau. If the employer is not the supplier, then what you do is you would set this value to no, and then make the necessary updates to your employer details and your supplier details. For this webinar, I am going to say my employer is the supplier, so just do your checks here. The next thing we need to do is check the postcodes. You can update your postcodes in Attaché before you run the validation. Now, more information on how to do this is available in the Help Centre. Once you've checked all the information under the Details tab, the next tab we need to go to is the Options tab. This is where you need to ensure that you've got the correct starting tax year, which is 2017. Once you have this information in here, what we then do is click on Print to run the data validation. Now, a report is displayed showing any errors or warnings that need to be corrected or investigated. You need to correct the errors indicated by the double asterisks before submitting information to the ATO. In this scenario, you can see I have 3 employees that have invalid TFN numbers. So what I need to do to correct this information is to go into the employee master file and update that before I can go and proceed to create the payment summaries. All right, so that is how you do your employee details validation and checks. We can then start to create the employees' payment summaries. Now, before you create any summaries, we recommend you archive your data and label this prior to creating payment summaries 2017-18, and then proceed to creating the payment summaries for all the employees. Okay, so how do we do this? So back into Attaché, we go through Payroll, Period End, and under Payment Summaries, we click on Create Payment Summaries. A prompt is displayed asking you if you have run the employer details validation without any errors. Now, if you haven't completed fixing the errors or doing the employer details validation, click No and do that step first, and then come in here and you can click Yes. Let's say I have done all of my checks and I've validated and fixed all my errors, so I'm going to say yes to the screen. Next step is make sure that you've got the correct starting tax year details, which is 2017. Now, Attaché recommends that you process the payment summaries for all employees, so make sure you've got that selected correctly here. And this will ensure that you're creating the payment summaries, including any ETP payment summaries for all your employees. When the process is complete, the payment summaries are then added to the payment summary data file to be included in the MDU file that will be sent to the ATO. Now, for today's webinar, what I'm going to do is create a payment summary for just one employee. So the way I do that is using ranges, and I'll specify Mary Oliver, and we'll create a payment summary for her. All right, so you can see that there are two payment summaries that have been created for this one employee, and this one employee has been added to the payment summary data file. Remember, if you have created payment summaries during the year, they do not get recreated. So what we recommend is you print the payment summary details report to check payment summaries that have already been created. So now that I've gone and created my payment summaries, we are ready to go and print the payment summaries and the ETP payment summaries and send them to our employees. Again, there are a few things we need you to do in the screen. First, check the starting tax year and then complete the authorized person's information. Note the payment summaries will be delivered to each employee depending on the delivery details that have been added for them in the document delivery address manager. Okay, so let's take a look at how we do this in Attaché. So firstly, we're going to print the payment summary. So the way we do that is we navigate through Payroll, Period End, and under Payment Summaries, you click Print Payment Summaries. Again, the prompt is displayed to check if you've done your employer details validation. I'm going to say yes. Make sure you've got the correct starting tax year and you've got the authorized person details entered in here. For this webinar, I am going to only print the payment summary for that one employee I created the payment summary for. So using ranges, I'll specify that employee and click Print. You can see a confirmation message pop up in here asking you if all the payment summaries printed correctly. So what we're going to do now is I'll show you what a payment summary would look like. So this is what a payment summary would look like. So make sure all the information in here is correct. Now, if all the payment summaries printed correctly, you can click yes. If only some of your payment summaries printed correctly, then what you do at that confirmation prompt is click no, and the system will then prompt you to enter a code of the last employee whose payment summary printed correctly. And if none of your payment summaries printed were correct, then what you do is you click no and select none in this little prompt you get. Then you can go and select to print all the payment summaries again. Let's say our payment summaries printed correctly. So going back into Attaché, I'm going to say yes and click Finish. The system now displays another prompt to say that there are ETP summaries that need to be printed. So let's click OK and we'll go and do that next. To print the ETP summaries, it's the same thing. So go through to Payroll, Period End, and under Payment Summaries, you click Print ETP Payment Summaries. Once again, the prompt is displayed to check if you have run the employer details validation without any errors. So I'm going to click Yes, I've done that. Similar to printing payment summaries, make sure you've got the correct starting tax year and the authorized person details entered in here. And remember, I'm only doing this for one employee, so I'm going to use ranges and specify that one employee here. And click Print. You get another confirmation prompt asking you if all the payment summaries printed correctly. So this is what an ETP payment summary looks like. What we need to look for is making sure that the information in here is correct, especially the employment termination payment code. Everything in here looks all right, so going back into my Attaché, I'm going to say yes and finish. Now that we've printed our payment summaries, including the ETP payment summaries, we can proceed to create the MDUP file to be sent to the ATO. The MDUP file, or the magnetic media file, contains all payment summaries created. This file needs to be sent to the ATO by the 14th of August using the ATO business portal. Once again, before you create the magnetic media file, we recommend you archive your data just in case there is any errors and you need to recreate it. So in Attaché, you would go to Payroll, Period End. Under Payment Summaries, click on Magnetic Media File Create. The system will prompt you saying, have you done your employer details validation? We've done that, so I'm going to click Yes. And another prompt is displayed to check if you're ready to send the information to the ATO, if you've created and printed the payment summaries and the ETP payment summaries, and if you have backed up your data. I've done all of that, so I'm going to click Yes. Okay, so once again, it's the same drill. Make sure you've got the correct starting tax year, which is 2017, and we need to enter a destination path to save your MDUP file to. Now note that this path should exist and must exist, else the file transfer will fail. So once you've got that information in here, what we then do is click Transfer. The system will display a prompt saying, do you wish to continue? I'm going to say yes. As we don't have many employees, this is quite quick. You can see a prompt is displayed over here and the full details of the information transferred to the file for the ATO on the screen behind. Make sure you check this report thoroughly, and once you're happy with it, click Yes to create the magnetic media file. So I've clicked Yes to say, yep, everything looks fine, let's create the file. Once we've done this, the employee's master file is updated, indicating that the payment summary data has been created and transferred to the magnetic media file, ready to be sent to the ATO. So let's take a look at how that appears. So from Payroll, under Master Files, Employee Details, click on Enquire. I'm going to look for Mary Oliver and click on the Tax tab, and you can see that information that I'm showing over here. So you can see the payment summary has been created, printed, and transferred. Now, once again, remember, you must process the end of year in the current payroll company. Okay. So now that we've gone and created payment summaries, printed the payment summaries, and created the ETP payment summaries and printed them, and we've also created our magnetic media file, what we then recommend for you to do is, before you roll the company into the new financial year and process any pays for 2018-19, is to take a backup of your current company's data set. Attaché recommends that you do this using the Archive Current Company method. Once you've successfully archived your data then what we ask you to do is log into the new company that you created initially, which was the historical company for 2017-18, and restore the archive we just did after creating the magnetic media file. This way you will end up with a copy of your 2017-18 payroll data. You can check that the data has been restored correctly by checking the master files and processing reports to ensure both datasets balance. Log back into your current company dataset, and what we're then going to do is the steps we need to take before we process our July pays. Okay, so let's take a look at what we need to do. Remember, we do this in the current company dataset. First thing we need to do is roll the payroll company into the new financial year. This will clear the figures and reset them for the new year. So how do we do this? So in Attaché, we go to Payroll, Period End, but this time under End of Period, click Payroll. Make sure you set both End of Period and End of Year to Yes, and click Accept. What this does is you've completed the end of year, and if you were to go into an employee's master file, you will notice all the income values are set to 0. So let's take a look at that. So if I go to an employee's master file, so Payroll, Master Files, Employee Details, Inquire, and I'll look for Patrick Burns and click on Income, you should see all these values have been set to 0. The next step we need to take is to update the tax scales for 2018-19 and check the tax details. Now this is to make sure that when you process your first pays in July, you're using the correct tax scales for your employees. So let's take a look at firstly how to download the tax scales in Attaché. So for this we go to Setups, Payroll, and under Tax Scales, we click on Download Tax Scales from Web. This will connect to the web and ask if you wish to download the new tax scales. So click Yes. The software automatically selects the tax scales that match the country selected in the country field under Payroll Options and downloads the file to your program folder. Once it's downloaded successfully, a message will appear on screen. So let's close out of here. Now that you've gone and downloaded the tax scales, the next step you need to do is import them for each payroll company where these tax scales apply to. So to do that, again from Setups, Payroll, under Options we go to Payroll Options and click on Tax Details tab. You can see Attaché recognizes that new tax scales are available. Click Yes, that you want to import the tax scale details, and a message will appear on screen to confirm that the tax information has been imported. Okay, so once you've imported the tax scales, you need to check 2 dates in the Tax Details tab. So the first one is the effective for payment date and then the start of tax year dates. Both these should be set to the 1st of July 2018. What we then need to do is update the maximum superannuation contribution base. Now this has increased to $54,030 per quarter from the 1st of July 2018. So how do we do this in Attaché? You go through Setups, Payroll, Employer Contribution and click Maintain. Select your superannuation guaranteed contribution code and update your quarterly value maximum to $54,030 and click Accept. And finally, for those who are on Attaché 18 and will be using single touch payroll reporting, you will need to itemize your allowances. Now there is a video on how to do so available in the Help Centre, and I'll talk you through that right at the end. And also Sharon will give you some information about single touch payroll in the little while. Now that we've taken all the steps, we are ready to process the pays in July. But once again, what we recommend is for you to take a backup of your database. Okay, so let's have a look at some basic housekeeping. If you wish, you can conduct some housekeeping on your data. This is just to tidy up your data set. Things you can do are things like deleting terminated employees, deleting any historical transactions, consolidating leave history transactions. Now, this is optional and can be done anytime throughout the year. Once again, more information on how to do so is available in the Help Centre. Let's take a look at some troubleshooting. So here are some of the scenarios that you may encounter while you're doing the end of year process. So with your payment summaries, the payment summary you've created is incorrect, but you have not yet sent the data to the ATO. Or the magnetic media file or the MDUP file you created is incorrect and you haven't yet sent this information to the ATO. So in this scenario, what you then do is you can delete the payment summaries, recreate and print the payment summaries, and recreate the MDUP file. It is important that you need to have a password level 1 to be able to delete the payment summaries and or undo the magnetic media batches. Another scenario is you have issued an incorrect payment summary and have already submitted the data to the ATO. So in this scenario, what you could do is create an amended payment summary, which is then marked for inclusion in the magnetic media file. And another scenario we have here is the payment summaries and the magnetic media file data is all correct, but the ATO couldn't read the MDUP file you sent them. So what you can then do is retrieve the batch and recreate the MDUP file for the ATO. Some of the scenarios you may encounter with ETP payment summaries. So the first one is the ETP amount or the payment code is incorrect. For this, you must create the ETP payment summary and reverse the ETP transaction using adjustment pay. You can then re-enter the ETP with the correct details. Now, help on how to do these is available in the Help Centre. Okay, so let's take a look at what information you need to know for Australian payroll and Attaché for 2018-19. So firstly, make sure you have your tax scales updated. Now, Attaché payroll tax scales for 2018-19 financial year are now available, so you can download them. If you're preparing for STP reporting, you will need to be on Attaché BI 3.7.2 or Attaché 18.1. So if you need any assistance, speak to your Attaché consultant. Single touch payroll. So to give you more information on STP, I'm going to pass this over to Sharon.
Okay, thanks, Meghna. So from 1st of July 2018, businesses with 20 or more employees are required to report single touch payroll. For less than 20 employees, STP starts from the 1st of July 2019, but if you want to report earlier, you are able to. Single touch payroll lodgements are simply an extension of your normal pay run. Instead of accumulating data for an annual report to the ATO, you'll send that data incrementally throughout the year to the ATO after each pay run. Attaché's STP solution connects your Attaché payroll company to an associated Attaché online organisation. When you process a pay run called a pay event for STP purposes, your STP data or batch will be uploaded to your online organisation and validated. When you're ready to lodge, you'll log into your organisation and submit the batch. STP is to be done on or before the pay date. Okay, so we go over to Attaché. So you process your pays, then go to single touch payroll, which brings you to your online organisation. Now this, you navigate to single touch payroll. Now this is assuming that You have your organisation set up and connected to Attaché Payroll. And if you haven't got it set up, you can please talk to your Attaché consultant. So once you've processed your pay, Attaché sends the STP file to your organisation and you navigate to the single touch payroll screen. So this is the batch that I've just uploaded. You can see that it's got the status of ready, so it's ready to be sent to the ATO. I'm going to submit batch, and there's a couple of things that I want to look at on this screen. Firstly, this top section here is the details for this batch. So it's the batch gross payments and the batch pay-as-you-go withholding. Then I look here and I've got a little red dot here. That little red, if there's anything that comes up in the data validation, then you will get the error. And so you can go in and have a look and see what is wrong here. So I'm just going to add the tax file number and save it. Now that tax file number will go into Attaché Payroll, into the master file. Now, all the employee information here are the year-to-date figures. So year-to-date gross, year-to-date PAYG. Now once I'm happy with that, I've got no more validation errors, I'm happy to submit. So I go to sign and submit. I need to put my name, so whoever is submitting the batch has to put in their name and click on the declaration, submit to the ATO. And you get this screen saying that it's finished. Okay, now that batch is ATO pending. When we do get a response back from the ATO, it'll be ATO, either ATO rejected or ATO confirmed. So the statuses, you can hide all of the statuses and only have the ones that you want. And also, if you've got more than one company attached to this organisation, you can pick which company you want to do the STP batch for. Okay, so we do have some specific STP and Attaché online webinars coming up. And these webinars are comprehensive STP setups and Attaché online setups. They're including employee directory, organisation charts and employee onboarding as well. So back over to you, Mina.
Thank you for that, Sharon. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll do our last poll for the day. So are you ready for single touch payroll reporting? And how did we go with that, Sharon?
Okay, Megan, it looks like 41% are all set to go, 41% are in the process, and there's 14% that have less than 20 employees, and 3% are unsure. So for those ones that are unsure, they can contact their consultant.
Okay, finding information. So now any information relating payroll end of year or STP, you can access this information in the Help Centre. For those who log into Attaché, if you press the F1 button, that's your Help Centre, or you could go into myattache.attachesoftware.com. So just to show you that information as to how it appears, we've got information about single touch payroll available up there on the left hand side, and if you scroll to the bottom there, you've got your Australian end of year for 2017-18 and you've got the payroll end of year. Now there was a question someone asked about deleting employees. There is a topic about that available in here in the Help Centre, so if you want to have a read through it, that's where it is. If you have any question in regards to today's webinar, type it into the questions area. If not, you can email training@attachesoftware.com. Now, we've also released Attaché learning videos, which is available through the Help Centre. So if I quickly show you where you find them. So again, access myattache.attachesoftware.com. And right at the bottom on the left-hand side, we have a thing called Attaché Learning. So this is where you've got all your learning videos that's available. Some of the ones that might be useful for you is creating the historical company that we spoke about in today's webinar on how to create a company and how to restore the data into the historical company for your 2017-18 payroll information, as well as itemizing allowances for Attaché 18 users for STP. Keep an eye out on this page because we do update this quite often and regularly, so you would have new videos popping up. And the last thing is the Attaché training and webinars. So as Sharon mentioned before, we do have a comprehensive STP and Attaché online webinars that's coming up. And the way you can access the information is through our website, which is attachesoftware.com/training. So just to show you that information, already got that open for you. So you've got all the details in here. So the Attaché Online and STP webinar is free, and the first one is held on the 11th of July. So just to let you know, that's available. So if you want to register, you can click on register here and register for the free Attaché Online and STP webinar. We also do have other training courses that's updated until the end of September. So if you want to have attend any training, please feel free to go through this site. Do we have any questions? So let me just have a quick read through some of the questions that's in the panel here. So there's a question here, in which company do I need to go and do my end of year rollover? So this is done in your current company data set. So remember, you're rolling your payroll data into the new financial year in your current company data set. Okay, another question I have here is, what allowances need to be itemized for STP reporting? All right, so let's take a look at that in Attaché. So if you go into Attaché, setups, payroll, allowances and maintain, and I'll show you one of the allowances here. So I'll do car allowance, for example. So these are all the classifications that are required by the ATO for single touch payroll reporting: other, car, transport, laundry, meals, domestic or overseas travel. Again, more information about STP can be found in the Help Centre. Okay, we have one which is a non-payroll related one. It is, when I'm printing the end of year guide from the Help Centre, it is only printing the cover page. So what we need to do, so when you're accessing information in the Help Centre, we recommend that you download the files. So just to show you as an example, I'll look at the Attaché document for end of year guide for payroll. You click on it, it opens the details here. You firstly need to download the file, and once the file is downloaded, you can then go and print that downloaded file. Okay, one more. What if I don't have time to create the payment summaries prior to processing a July pay? Okay, so what you need to do in this scenario is, before you run the end of year and roll your data into the new year, we recommend you archive your data first, create a historical company and restore the data into in there for your payroll 2017-18, and then run your end of year in the current data set, because that will be the area you would go and enter your new pays for 2018-19. Now you would then use your historical company to process the payment summaries, to print them, and then to create your MDUP file. All right, thank you all for watching, and good luck with your end of year process.